Hi, everyone. Welcome to topic 7.7. My name is Ms. Cosgrove, and today we're going to be talking about changes as a result of the world economy. We'll look at how outsourcing and economic restructuring has led to decline in jobs in core regions while increasing jobs in our newly industrializing countries. So, what are some of the things that we'll learn today? We know that recent economic changes have led to increases in international trade, deindustrialization, and also a growing interdependence on the world economy. Outsourcing and economic restructuring have had big impacts in jobs in both core regions and newly industrializing countries. So, what is outsourcing and what is economic restructuring? Outsourcing is moving jobs in manufacturing and production, as well as jobs and services, outside of an area or country in which a company might be located. If we think about economic restructuring, this is a shift in urban areas from manufacturing jobs in industry and factory work to a more service sector based economy. So let's look at some examples of some of this. The geographic location of jobs has changed. And we see that some specialized jobs may go overseas to countries that have a comparative advantage. For example, countries with large numbers of English speakers might have people working in call centers. Why do companies move jobs overseas? For lower costs. So, US companies have moved customer service call centers, like when you call for help with your internet. If you call Xfinity and say you're having problems connecting, or if you call a bank, or if you call a credit card, or even if you call Apple technology support. So, US companies have moved their customer service call centers across borders. Mexico is becoming a very popular call service center, and also overseas. India and Philippines are also two very popular places. Why do this? Because it's much cheaper to move these calls overseas than to have American workers in these jobs. And they're still able to provide a high enough quality for the customer so that you might even barely notice that you're talking to someone thousands of miles away. The other thing that we outsource are manufacturing. And so manufacturing microchip semiconductors can often be done overseas for a much lower cost of labor. And we also outsource our textile work. The United States grows and exports the raw cotton, but then we send it overseas to have it processed. Many international apparel companies are starting to have manufacturing bases in Vietnam because of favorable economic conditions. What does that mean? It means lower cost of labor. So, why don't you do this? Put me on pause just for a second and run to your closet. Go see where your clothes have been made. Make a list, or maybe the t shirt that you're wearing now. Which region has the most or has made the most in your closet? So, welcome back. Did you notice that your closet might have items from Malaysia or India or Thailand or Indonesia or Vietnam? These mighty V nations are producing more and more textiles. They're set to enter some of the top most competitive manufacturing countries. You might still see items made in China, but you might start seeing some of these mighty V nations end up in your closet. Are these countries the new China? Maybe, maybe not. but they're definitely emerging economies for low-cost manufacturing. They'll start to manufacture those labor-intensive products like apparel, like toys, the textiles, and your basic consumer electronics. And so, what are some of these impacts of restructuring and outsourcing? We know that in the LDCs, you'll have an increase in jobs, but we'll see a decline of jobs in the MDCs. So, what happens to those people whose jobs in the MDCs who've been working in manufacturing? What happens to them? What happens to the cities and locations that depended on that sector of the economy? And what do you think the impact is on an LDC? Why don't you pause me here for just a moment and think about that and write down some notes? So, welcome back. And maybe in your notes about some of the impacts, you might have put some of these. You definitely have positives and negatives for both. So, what are some of the negatives with restructuring in an MDC? Well, unemployment and loss of jobs. Jobs that were middle class wages, they're now gone and they're lost not only to outsourcing and labor overseas, but also to automation. Population losses we've seen in manufacturing cities like Detroit, which was Motown, right? The Motor City, the heart of auto manufacturing. And so, what happens when you lose jobs and population? You might see abandoned homes, unused buildings, vacant lots. That all means urban decay. On the plus side, companies might become more efficient and more profitable, and those lower costs might be passed on to consumers. If we look at some of the benefits in the LDCs, they have employment and increasing job opportunities. They might start moving up that chain of development. We might see increased urbanization because we'll see that people are moving off those rural areas into cities for factory work. And then we might see an increasing middle class. And maybe this middle class has more disposable income that they can spend on luxury items. Maybe it's not a super luxury like the chunky dunky shoes, but maybe they will be able to go to a restaurant and eat. So, this increasing disposable income can encourage growth in other businesses. So, a negative impact of economic restructuring in an LDC can be poor labor laws that result in worker abuse. Are they getting paid for working overtime? Um, what about the workplace safety standards? What are the textile and manufacturing factories like? Um, in 2012, there was a huge factory fire in Bangladesh that killed hundreds of people. So sometimes in LDCs, we see labor laws that are just not even existent, and we definitely see poor workplace safety standards. So let's look at a question in practice. I'm going to let you read this, look at the map, and let's read this for just a moment, and then you can come back. Pause me and you can come back. Okay there, so welcome back. So here we have a map, a stimulus with gross domestic product per capita by country for 1 year in 2017. So the question's asking, which of the following best explains a limitation of the map and answering questions about the world's changing economic landscape? Hopefully you put D. So the map shows economic productivity and GDP per capita for 1 year, but we're really asking about the changing economic landscape. So you would want to see a map that's going to show you change over time. And this map does not show that change over time. It's just showing for 1 year. So what are some of the things that we should take away? Outsourcing and economic restructuring have impacts. Jobs will decline in some regions in the core, and they might increase in other regions like newly industrializing countries. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next time. Hi, everyone. Welcome to topic 7.7, and we're going to be talking a little bit more today about the changes as a result of the world economy. My name is Ms. Cosgrove, and I am coming to you from Coral Gables Senior High School. So what are some of the things that we'll learn? So we're going to look at how some of the countries outside the core and the growth of industry has resulted in the creation of new manufacturing zones. We will look at how the growth of industry has led to an international division of labor. And then we'll also see that the contemporary economic landscape has totally been transformed. So some terms to know, and on the next few slides, you will see terms that you'll have to know. I'm going to go over these a little bit with you. So a special economic zone is an area in a country, and remember we're talking, for the most part, less developed countries, newly industrializing countries. So this is an area of a country where business and trade laws are totally different from other regions of the country. And what is the goal of doing this? It is to attract foreign investment. You want other countries or multinational corporations to invest in your country. So countries will offer tax incentives for that investment. And we see a lot of this in China and in Latin America and increasingly in Africa as well. A free trade zone is usually an area around an airport or a seaport where you literally have free trade. Goods can be landed and stored, handled, and re-exported, typically tariff free. And then we've got our export processing zones. And so these are typically in developing countries that want to focus on increasing their manufacturing. And they will offer incentives for corporations to come in, manufacture in their country, and then export. It is not meant for sale in that country. It is only meant for setting up shop, manufacturing, and exporting. So on the next couple of slides, you're going to see some terms that you have to know. And I'm not going to go over all of these with you because I know your teachers will be doing that with you. If you want to pause and read them a little bit more, you can do that. But you do need to know International Division of Labor and post-Fordist methods of production, multiplier effects, and economies of scale. And you also have to know agglomeration, just-in-time delivery, and growth poles. And so we'll talk a little bit more about a few of those. So let's look at an example. The International Division of Labor. Remember, manufacturing has been relocated from developed countries like the US, European countries, Japan, and it's moved to developing countries in Asia. China, Vietnam, India are mighty V countries. And also it's moved to developing countries in Latin America. Why? Cheap labor. Companies are searching for the cheapest locations to manufacture and assemble goods. Labor has shifted to the developing world where costs are much lower than in the developed world. Look at your sneakers. Where were they made? What about your smartphones? Let's see where they're made. So the smartphone is truly global. Where is it made exactly? I mean, that's super complicated. It was invented and designed in the United States. But the glass for your smartphone is manufactured by Corning, and that's in the United States. Cobalt is mined in the Congo, and we need the cobalt to make those lithium ion batteries. Memory chips are coming from Japan and South Korea. Cameras are made in Japan, and accelerometers are made in Germany, and the gyroscopes are made in Switzerland. So this is truly global. Finally, all of those parts are assembled in China. So this is our International Division of Labor. And by the way, I also have here now India because Apple has just signed contracts in India for the assembly of the iPhone to happen in India. Those phones will be sold in the Asian market, and the phones that are assembled in China are sold to us. So developing countries in the International Division of Labor with the lower paying jobs, look at the Made in Vietnam label on this t-shirt. Apparel companies are moving manufacturing to places where cost of labor is much cheaper. Making this t-shirt in the United States would cost much more than making this t-shirt in Vietnam. So that's why manufacturing jobs are moving overseas because of the cheaper cost of labor. So we also have this concept of just-in-time delivery. And this is really an inventory strategy, and it's used to increase efficiency and save money. Companies receive raw materials or goods just as they need them for production. So, for example, if I am a kitchen cabinet manufacturer, I'm not going to have inventory of 10 different types of wood to make my kitchen cabinets. I am only going to call for the inventory to arrive right as I'm ready to produce and manufacture those cabinets. So I will receive them, I will receive those materials, the wood, just in time for production. That way I don't have to store all of this wood and waste money on inventory. So let's look at what a growth pole is, because this is another change in our contemporary economic landscape. So a growth pole is an area where economic growth starts, but it spreads. And so we tend to see, not always, but we tend to see highly innovative and technologically advanced industries. Sometimes the government, whether it's a state or local government, they'll also encourage growth of industry here, and they'll offer subsidies or tax incentives for other businesses, similar businesses, to relocate. Other businesses that support these industries might establish themselves close by because they might be supplying goods and services to the growth pole. So if we look here, here's the growth pole of Silicon Valley. We have an area where economic growth starts and spreads. So we've got Berkeley, we've got Stanford University. We also have a NASA Ames Research Center there as well. And what industries moved there? Some of our most popular software developmental companies. So what industry would you consider a growth pole? Aeronautical, electronic, higher ed, medical, entertainment? What companies would you consider to be highly innovative or technologically advanced? What about a company like Google or Facebook or Netflix or even Tesla? All of these companies, they have moved to Silicon Valley. So let's practice a question. I'm going to let you read this and I'll pause and you'll pause just for a moment and then we'll come back. So, welcome back. Which of the following would best accompany the map shown to help explain the origins of this high-tech region? So if you look at this map here, you see that we've got Stanford University, we've got the NASA Research Center, and this shaded area in light gray, this is Silicon Valley. So hopefully you picked a description of how the area's research institutions, including Stanford University and NASA, served as growth poles for development. Remember, this question was asking about the origins of this high-tech region. So I hope you learned a little bit today about changes as a result of the world economy. We mentioned SEZs, free trade zones, export processing zones, the International Division of Labor, and then some parts of how our contemporary economic landscape has changed. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'm going to give a big shout out to my production team.